Welcome back to Nothing But Truth, probably on AFR Talk. And without further ado, we go to a guest that I said, a special guest, and everybody's like, well, a special guest? You just had Dan the Man Celia on. Yes, he is a special guest. But the guest now that we have on, you may have caught if you've listened to the show over the years. But certainly in recent memory, we haven't had this man on. And my question is always, why haven't we had him on more? He is a personal safety and self-defense consultant. He is a 4-time world kickboxing champion. He is a world champion martial artist. He's trained the likes of Chuck Norris's black belts. He's worked in security as being a number of ways, advising corporations as well as being a bodyguard. And he has worked with kids and adults on self-defense as well as martial arts. And he's worked with schools on the same. See where I'm going with this? Here he is. It's Earnest Hart, Jr. And welcome, Mr. Hart. How are you, sir?
Mr. Durham, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing very well. And you also are a radio talk show host. Tell us the name of your show, sir.
It's called the Sensei Hart Show.
Sensei Hart Show. And
yes.
Sometimes you'll cover a subject like this. One of the things that has been great about having known Mr. Hart and the work he does, you go to earnesthart.com, I'll post it up on the Facebook, is that he really gives practical advice when it comes to issues that we're all concerned with. Kids are going back to school, and we are all concerned with bullying. We've heard a lot about it. We've seen agendas that we're not fans of try to be introduced into the subject rather than just focusing on the bullying aspect. And so my question to you, Mr. Hart, is, hey, what is a bully?
Well, as you know, Crane, over the years, there's so many different types of bullying, from workplace to relationship. But we have a big problem with kids who are bullied. It's any time when one person is physically or verbally abusive to another person in a way that it hurts the other person, the way it makes them feel bad. And it can go to a physical situation, which normally happens after the verbal, because that person has done nothing to back them away from it.
Is that where you see a lot of the issues come up, is a lot of folks don't know how to handle themselves in the sense of verbally dealing with somebody who is a bully, and then I guess we go to, does that make that person a victim?
Yes, as you know, most kids, they do and see and act like the people they're around. Or if they see their parents, or if they see some friend or somebody who is doing that, they try to do it themselves. And a lot of times it happens from what they see it. So what happens is they'll start off, it's always started off verbally. It's always teasing as you're young, and verbally, and then after a while, it's just normally it takes off, and pretty soon it can become physical.
And that is oftentimes the escalation, and kids are so often, they sit back and they say, okay, I remember this. I was bullied in my high school and junior high career. I have had the privilege of knowing Mr. Hart because I was attacked years back and assaulted, and I went for the best in the field of security and understanding self-defense. And Mr. Hart, I was blessed enough to have the opportunity to work with him, and he currently works with our kids now, which is godsend. But that said, you deal with kids coming to you, I am sure, like I would have done, I'm sure, that say, hey, look, I'm getting verbally abused, and we hear, well, if you go tell your parents about somebody verbally abusing you, what happens is then you're called all sorts of names, mama's boy, and a whole host of things. So what's the right avenue for someone who is being bullied, a kid who's being bullied?
Well, first of all, Karen, how I started was the same thing. Of course, I was Jehovah's Witness young, growing up in the city of St. Louis, and I was just, tortured in all kind of ways because I was this kid who was religious and wouldn't fight back. And the problem with that is you let it go too long, it starts going off to where you start thinking, what do you have to do? And I was so close to get in a gun. I knew our guns were in shooting somebody. People don't realize how hard this is. So it has to be something that needs to be taken care of early. And so if you have somebody who is being, bullied, you need to take it, if you can nip it in the bud as soon as possible, the better, sooner the better. Now, what happens is when you go to the parents and say something, of course, sometimes it can backfire on you because the parents don't always know how to deal with it. I mean, I've seen situations where parents tell their kids, go handle it yourself, or they may say go up and talk to the teachers or get into it with the kids. I just saw something last week where this parent went on the bus and, threatened the kid to mess with her kids. So you got to know how to do it the right way.
And in finding that way, it's the idea of, okay, handle it yourself, or you tell a teacher, which is great. I think, obviously telling somebody to do what you can, but you really, if that happens and it's taken care of, you're still in the zone where, okay, you may not have dealt with it personally. And I always believe in the sense of, okay, if this happens, I want to be prepared for it. I know our audience feels the same way in so many ways. We want to be prepared. We have an obligation to be prepared. And so we think, okay, how about martial arts? But is martial arts about just getting physically trained so you can break a board and physically allow your presence to be felt? Or is it much more than that?
It's much more to that, and it goes back again. It counts on who is training you. Here's how it is. In the past, I've seen schools, they have the rules as far as dealing with bullies. If you do this, this is what's going to happen to you, on and on and on. But it still doesn't help the kid in it, because in the real world, that kid's going to eventually have to stand up for himself, and if he doesn't handle it now, he doesn't get the skills to do it now, he's going to always be bullied somewhere along the line. People are going to pick up on it. I mean, that's just how our human nature is. The strong look for the weak, and they deal with them in different ways. And why the bully does it so many different ways, but mostly to make themselves feel good. Their self-esteem is low themselves. But then I've seen guys who were pretty successful in athletics and things of that nature. They will still bully other people. So there's no one set way, but what you do have to have in your corner is that self-esteem. So going back to the martial arts, if you have a good martial arts instructor who is trained in that, they can give you the skills necessary. And when people know how to take care of themselves, once they know how to take care of themselves, they can use alternative ways of dealing with it because they feel good about themselves that they don't always have to resort to violence.
Okay, and so finding a good instructor, how best to do that? Because there are a lot of studios out there. There are a lot of folks advertising that they have what I will just say that you provide, and in that way, how do you find out about the instructor? How do you evaluate the instructor?
That is hard to find because not all instructors are the same, like anything else. You have to find the best way you can do is go talk to that person. And if their ad says, hey, we deal with bullying and all that, there are certain people who have programs that will be in depth with that program. It should assist not only the physical stuff, but it should also, it should teach you how to deal with conflict, coping skills. They do role playing, talking about it, and then awareness and seeing stuff before it happens. These kind of things help give the kids better understanding. Plus, it gives them a variety of ways to deal with these situations. But not all things work on everybody. So if you can give a variety of things to make them feel good about themselves, that's a better way for them to know how to deal with the situation, and they don't have to resort to violence all the time.
So there are the strategies that you just pointed out, some of them in the sense of using your head and using, but you've got to have the presence of mind to feel secure enough to do that. So often
humor is always something, that you can use to go into. Some people just walk away. Again, that takes, it takes a lot of guts to do that, but you got to know who you are because your job is to diffuse that fight, the potential fight. And the thing is, people stand up to that bully will make you feel good about yourself, but it also let other people know that, hey, there is an alternative way of dealing with it. And again, this is not something you just do by talking about it. It has to be trained. That's why you do role playing. When I get people, I get role playing. I talk to them and I find out what's going on in their head. Then I show them here is to the extreme you can deal with stuff, but let's back it up. Like, what are the alternatives? Because most of the time you can deal with stuff and nip it in the bud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what we want to do, truly. Bottom line, today, as you know society and culture and the way things are going, did you feel an obligation to train your children to learn how to defend themselves? Because obviously you have an extraordinary, your son and everything else, I mean, amazing daughter. But my question is, do you feel, if you're talking to parents, is it our obligation to make sure our kids can defend themselves?
I feel, you know what, the way our society is going now, people, if they want to be realistic, it's changing. And one of the things they're going to have is if they want to really help their kids, is give them the skills to deal with the situations like bullying ahead of time. Because it's coming down the pike. It's very, with all the modern things we're doing, all the advances we're making, we're also getting people in different areas with the internet and things of that nature. It's kind of taught people to do things and say things and act a certain way that they used to would not do. And that's
right.
What's the scary side of it. So what we have to do is be realistic. And most parents, I call it denial. And I say that it's more than the river in Egypt. People do not want to believe that times are changing. And when stuff does happen, they say, well, the police can handle it. But they can't handle everything. They're not there. Our police force, we have the greatest police force in the world, don't get me wrong. But they can't be everywhere.
Right.
And most police officers I know, they have a set of rules. They teach their family and friends. They would not tell you in public because it's their job. Their job is to call the police. The police only come after the fact. So it behooves you to teach your parents, especially your kids, how to deal with these types of situations before they're happening, because kids are getting snatched off the street, kids are getting into fights. There's all kind of things going down. And even something as simple as if you see a firearm in a crowded place, more and more people coming in shooting, you got to teach your kids how to run, get away from
How to
that.
get away. Earnest Hart Jr., we're going to post the site, and this is a weekly segment. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you so much.
American Family Radio.
AFR Talk.
The AFA is a non